Africa, a continent with a rich history and cultural heritage, is frequently thought of as a place where there is a lot of hunger, poverty, and underdevelopment. In this video, we'll examine the reasons for poverty in Africa and discover why, despite the continent's abundant natural riches, it still struggles with poverty. Welcome to the Mezinance YouTube channel. This video will cover the subject of why Africa is still regarded as being underdeveloped. Let's begin by deciphering what poverty is. Lack of access to necessities including food, shelter, clothing, and healthcare is referred to as poverty. It is determined by a person's income, spending, and accessibility to basic services. Poverty is pervasive and affects a sizable section of the population in Africa. Over 40% of Africans, according to the World Bank, reside below the poverty line, which is set at $2.15 per day. Let's talk about why Africa is still regarded as being in poverty now that we have a strong understanding of what poverty is. 1. Corruption and mismanagement. In many African nations, corruption and poor management of public resources are major problems. Public officials frequently divert funding meant for fundamental services and development projects, which results in a shortage of infrastructure, healthcare, and educational services. This impedes economic development and maintains poverty in the area. 2. Dependence on commodity exports. The export of raw materials like oil, minerals, and agricultural goods is a major source of income for many African nations. Because of this, they are more susceptible to changes in commodity prices, which have an impact on their economies and prolong poverty. For instance, Nigeria, one of the continent's top producers of oil, is highly reliant on oil exports. However, changes in oil prices have had an impact on the economy of the nation and increased poverty in the area. 3. Poor governance and political instability. Political unrest and bad leadership have stymied economic development and prolonged poverty in many African nations. Poor economic policies as a result of unstable and ineffective governments have slowed economic progress and raised poverty. As an illustration, Zimbabwe, which has seen years of political unrest, has struggled to entice foreign investment and generate job opportunities, resulting in the country's pervasive poverty. 4. Poor infrastructure. Poor infrastructure is a significant barrier to Africa's economic development. Businesses have found it challenging to function due to a lack of electricity, transportation, and communication infrastructure, which has slowed economic growth and increased poverty. For instance, the absence of electricity has hampered the growth of small enterprises and maintained poverty in many rural parts of Africa. 5. Conflict and war. Conflict and war have wreaked havoc on numerous African nations and fueled the continent's ongoing poverty. Infrastructural devastation and population displacement have hampered economic progress and made it challenging for people to access necessities like food, housing, and healthcare. For instance, the violence in Sudan has made it challenging for the nation to entice foreign investment and provide job possibilities. 6. Limited access to education and healthcare. Limited access to education and healthcare, particularly in rural regions, is a significant problem in many African nations. This directly affects poverty by impeding the growth of human capital and making it challenging for individuals to escape poverty. For instance, girls are frequently denied access to education in many African nations, which restricts their career options and keeps poverty in the area alive. 7. Environmental deterioration. Another important problem in Africa that contributes to poverty is environmental degradation. Droughts, crop failures, and a lack of water due to climate change and environmental degradation have an impact on the region's food security and add to its poverty. For instance, the Sahel region of Africa, which is made up of numerous nations, is currently experiencing a severe food crisis as a result of environmental deterioration, which has resulted in the region's pervasive poverty. 8. Lack of economic diversification. The lack of economic diversification in many African nations leaves them susceptible to economic shocks and prolongs poverty. For instance, the agricultural industry is the major employer in many African nations. Yet it is frequently characterized by low productivity and a lack of investment, which impedes economic progress and keeps poverty in the area alive. 9. High debt burden. The persistent poverty in many African nations is a result of the continent's high debt loads, which makes it difficult for them to finance essential services and development initiatives. For instance, a sizable percentage of the national budget in many African nations goes toward paying off debt, leaving little money for investments in areas like infrastructure, healthcare, and education that are essential for eradicating poverty. 10. Lack of access to finance. Small and medium-sized businesses in particular struggle in many African nations due to a lack of access to financing, SMEs. This keeps poverty in the area by making it harder for businesses to get the financing they require to expand and create jobs. For instance, a lack of collateral, a lack of credit history, and a lack of financial institutions make it difficult for SMEs in many African nations to acquire financing. This inhibits economic development and keeps poverty in the area in place. Poverty in Africa is a complicated problem brought on by several factors, including mismanagement and corruption, reliance on commodity exports, weak political leadership, and political instability. Shoddy infrastructure, conflict, and war, poor access to healthcare and education, environmental degradation, a lack of economic diversification, high debt loads, and a lack of financial resources. Addressing these underlying issues and fostering an atmosphere that supports economic expansion and development is crucial if Africa is to end poverty. I hope you found this video helpful, and I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more informative videos on finance and wealth management. You can also check out our website mezinance.com for more financial tips. See you on the next one.